Hello, fellow family adventurers. We're absolutely thrilled to have a chat today with Rachel Carlson, the innovative founder and director of the Worldschool Pop-Up Hub. She's a connector, and she is here today to talk to us about the Pop-Up Hub, her travels and adventures. So, Rachel.
Thank you so much for having me, David. This is great to connect again. I'll just let people know that we first met about a year and a half ago in Merida. And then we saw each other again in San Miguel de Allende, and then again for another pop-up in Mexico City. So I love how these work. Like we meet people, and then once they're in our friend circle, it's easy to find them again when we're in the same area.
It is. It's so cool to just keep popping up again and back in everybody's lives over and over again.
Right. Yeah, it's been great.
So So yeah, that's one of the coolest parts about that I found, at least with traveling and everything. For those people that aren't familiar with you at all, I know I just gave a quick introduction. Can you give people a little bit about who you are? What do you do?
Okay, sure. Let's back way up. I met my husband in 1994. I was probably 2 years old then. No, so I was 18. We met at university. We started traveling together really early on and realized that we loved it. We got married after 5 years of hanging out together. And then we had kids another 5 years after that. So we had 10 full years together before we added children to the mix and did lots of travel during that time, rearranged our work schedules so we could have project based commitments. And then after that, we would go travel for an extended period and then do that over and over. And so when we had children, people said, "Oh, how great for you guys. Now you can settle down." And we're like, "Wait, what? Why would we do that?" So there was no reason that we wanted to settle down. We loved traveling. We wanted our kids to love traveling. So they all had passports as infants. They were all babies on their first trips. And we were still living a traditional lifestyle. My husband had a desk job. My kids were in public school. I was a stay-at-home mom. And we were happy. We were super happy, but we were not content. Like we had a great community and everything else, but felt like something was missing. Felt like we weren't quite with our people or doing what we wanted to do with our lives. So we sold our house. This is in 2014 now. And we had no plan. We didn't know what we were going to do. We moved into a friend's basement. She said, "You can hang out here as long as you need to." We were known as the basement people for a couple months. And then one day my husband said, "We could just move to Hawaii." I was like, "Oh, we could move to Hawaii." So we did. And like in a 2 week turnaround, we had everything ready to go, got the kids enrolled in school there, and went and lived on the beautiful island of Kauai for 2 years. And after that, we kind of got squeezed out of housing, which happens, and came back to the continental US. We picked up our van in LA and we drove all the way across the US looking at like, oh, could we live here? How about Taos? How about Scottsdale? How about like we just hit all these places across the US and got all the way to South Carolina and nothing had connected yet and found Hilton Head, South Carolina. And we said either we turn south and head to Florida because we're out of US this direction, or we find something here. And we did. We found a great condo, jumped into the community there for 2 years, put the kids in public school. And so at the end of this is 4 years now that we're living in fully furnished rentals because we'd sold everything off. My husband brilliantly says, we're working online. At this point, both of us were working online. And we could work anywhere that we have an internet signal. I'm like, "Are you kidding me? How did we not think about this 5 years ago when we sold the house?" And so we wrapped up the school year with the kids, pulled them out. All we needed to do was add in the homeschooling piece, which I'm a former educator. I'd read a lot about unschooling. I said, let's just do a year of unschooling and see how it works. And it was perfect for us. And our kids, let's see, at that point, the oldest was 13. He is now 19 and he graduated from high school last year. So the rest of our family were beginning our sixth year of full-time travel, but he decided that we were running his life for him, which is what teenagers are going to tell you. That's part of their job is to figure out what they want to do with their lives. So he took a year off of travel to go live in Wisconsin, which was our home state. And he went to high school in person for his senior year. And he just graduated June of 2023. And now he's off on his own and wanting to travel some more. So he's already taken 2 road trips this summer and trying to figure out like, how do I weave this travel into my life as well? Like with the budget he has now and with the desires he has. So anyway, the rest of us are still enjoying this full-time travel. And this probably segues into the pop-up hub is we're spending so much time together, which is great, right? Like we only get so many years with our children. And I really encourage people to take time to be with their family, get to know your kids. And as I was getting to know my kids on a 24/7 basis, we realized traveling is super cool, but you don't always meet people. And especially you throw COVID into the mix. And then it was very hard, even coming out of COVID, to meet people. People were still distancing or in their social bubbles. And I said, well, there's got to be other folks like us around who are just ready to travel more, ready to meet up with people who understand that I don't need to explain, like, no, my kids don't go to school. No, I don't have a house. Yes, my mail goes to someone else's house, blah, blah, blah. Like, these people don't even care that unless they're actually interested. Like, oh, how did you set up your mail? 'Cause I'm having trouble with my mail service. So it's a completely different conversation when you're talking with other traveling families. So we ran an event just out of the blue. I said, hey, we're going to be here for a week. If anyone wants to come and join us, come along. So 8 families showed up. Within the first day, the kids are like, oh, yeah, we got to do this again. And so we ran one more later that summer. And again, it was a hit. We're like, okay, this is a business. And again, not like a business where we're raking in millions and millions of dollars. It's a connection service. Like, we want people to find each other. We want to allow other people to host events like this. Bring the world schoolers to you, because there's something really special about connecting with people who get you, who understand you and aren't going to judge. They're not going to be, raking you through the coals about, are you educating your kids the right way? Are you ruining their lives? We get all sorts of questions, and it's just nice to have some people on your team that you connect with. So we started the pop-up hub to do that. And that also provided our kids a chance to have socialization as we traveled. So when we were in areas, sometimes it was hard to meet people. We're pretty good about talking with locals and meeting people, but threw a wrench into that. So basically, we knew that we had to put more effort into creating social situations for us and for our kids. And that's kind of how this all began. And now it's amazing. I love connecting families together and seeing them over and over back on Facebook with new families that they've met. And then, oh, we pulled this guy in who we saw 2 years ago somewhere else. And yeah, it's really neat. Okay, so that probably was a lot of background.
That's awesome background though. I mean, and you're so passionate about what you do, about not only the traveling, because you were doing that before the kids, traveling during the kids, setting up all these activities, not just for yourselves, but for the kids. I mean, that's one of the wonderful things I like about the pop-up hubs. They're not just for kids, they're for us adults too.
Absolutely.
So now, how many pop-ups would you say you've done already, or have you kept count?
Okay, so right now we have published 52 events. Not all of these have run yet. So there's a dozen on the calendar now. So we've run 40. And probably of those I've hosted personally, I would say 25. So roughly those numbers. And we're close to 350 families who have joined us over the last two plus years. Yeah, it's
I love
amazing.
and I love that you say that you've hosted personally, because it's not like you're just some Joe Schmo trying to connect people and letting them do all the work, but you host some of them yourself. You have people, you give others an opportunity, like us, to an
Yes.
opportunity to do something where we are and connect with our own groups and expand our groups, which was kinda cool, like what we're doing in Buenos Aires in a few months. So it's just really cool. And what you're doing right there in Tokyo right now. So there's all sorts of things. How did all of your experiences really lead up to the creation of the pop-up?
So I think the main piece of the puzzle was the kids were not happy in the lifestyle that we had created. So for the first year, 2 years, it was still like that honeymoon phase. Everything was brand new and fresh. We were seeing new places, going places all the time. And then once we settled into like, okay, this is our lifestyle now, do we feel fulfilled? Do we feel that we're doing the right things for our kids? And the kids are like, you know what? We're sick of this. We like traveling, but we really want friends. We really just want to be in one area so we can have friends. And they equate that with going to school because that's what they had known. Like when they had friends, they were in school. So they said, we want to go back to school, which is fine. My oldest chose to go back to school. And it wasn't that I gave him permission. I mean, he was nearly 18, so he was going to do what he wanted to do. But I give them the opportunity to do what they need to. And with the school, it wasn't that I'm against my kids going to school, but when we really dug deep, we saw you're missing school, but it's not because of the school piece, it's because of the friends piece. And so we thought, how do we find more friends for you? And through the pop-ups, it's worked out really wonderfully because now some families travel with us. I mentioned before that people come to multiple events. So your family, you came to Merida, and then we saw you again in Mexico City. And it's just really neat to be able to reunite with people along the way. But also, we've had people join us on 3 different continents now. So they're just like, oh, where's Rachel going to be? I think I'll just kind of figure out my plan according to where they're going to be, because then it's easy. And with the pop-ups, you had mentioned the activities. We plan a week's worth of activities. People just come to what they want to. It's not like you have to be there 8 a.m. till 10 p.m. every day. It's just, whatever interests you, show up. There's going to be people there. It'll be fun. But it's great for the adults too, because I don't know who's typically one adult is the planner in the household, and it tends to be me. And it's just really nice to have a whole week where everything's laid out. You get a little message in the afternoon, like, here's what's going on tomorrow. 10 a.m. we'll be here, noon we'll be there. After that, we're going to this museum. And just to not have that planning for a week it's such a relief. I mean, that's definitely worth the money right there, to have friends and a whole plan for the week. And it's just like so simple. Just show up as you want to and as you can. So I think that has really been a great piece of the puzzle for us, because we also attend pop-ups that other hosts put on. And just for those exact reasons, I love just having that week laid out and all the social connections that come through it. And with my kids now, so back to your question, was what led up to this? It was the social piece. And so now that we have different hosts and different events running all the time, we're more likely to run into those friends over and over again. And for the kids, they now have some very solid friendships that we stay in touch with online when we're not in person. And then when we're in person, it's just like a big party. So yeah, it's been fabulous for my family. And I think for other families too, the feedback we get is that this is really what a lot of people needed.
I think it really is what a lot of people need, because I've talked to a lot of travelers and I hear burnout stories all the time. Like, oh, we're ruins out. We're done with the ruins for a while. We've seen so many; they're all starting to blend together. Or I'm done with beaches. I've seen so many beaches. And to somebody who's not a full time traveler, this sounds like a first world
We're
problem
so
or something.
petty. Yeah.
But I mean, it is a reality, and you have to vary up what you're doing and what you're doing and where you're going and who you're seeing, because you get lonely. Sometimes it's, you and your spouse, and that's good. That's great. And you and your kids. And again, that's also great. But again, sometimes you do want something else, and you do want to talk to somebody who maybe you've seen before, and so you can reconnect. And that's what you guys offer with these pop-up hubs. I love that. So, and
Thank
the
you.
fact that they're all planned out is awesome. Uh, Brody does most of our planning. I'll tell her a few key things that I want to do. Like when we were in Peru, I just wanted to go sandboarding. That was my one thing. And we worked that in, and things like that. But she does all the planning. And when we find a pop-up, it is so nice that she usually gets to have us break for a week where she doesn't have to do the
Exactly.
planning.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. It's a huge help.
it really is. Now, what would you say? What would your kids say are their favorite things about the pop-up hubs? Is just the social part, or do they have like a favorite activity they like to plan when you guys actually plan these, or what would they say?
Well, I would say, first of all, is they help for the pop-ups that I plan, and they help with the planning. And we comb through articles about what's great to do with kids in this area. There's certain things like I love hot springs. So if there's ever a hot spring around, that typically gets put onto the plan. And the kids, well, okay, they're teenagers. So they like to visit Starbucks around the world. And I'm like, for a while, I was hiding that. Like, why am I hiding that? Yeah, we're super American. But the thing is, it is, when you think about it, it's culturally significant. Like, this is what Starbucks looks like in Mexico. Here's what it looks like in Paris. Here's what it looks like in Tokyo. We've been to like 4 in Tokyo. And they compare prices. It's just a way for them to see the world the way like they like it. So a lot of times, even though we don't say, all right, 2 p.m. we'll be at Starbucks, a lot of times there is a chance for a coffee break, or the kids can go off on their own, or go to a mall, or just do something teen related, just hang out without the adults there, go hang out on the square, get an ice cream, whatever it is. So they like that. But the other thing, which I didn't expect, is that I try to include lots of different types of activities. So nature walks, museums, historical architecture, like just like bits and pieces. So you get a feel for the place that you're visiting. And my kids love going to museums with other kids. And I think part of the reason why is that they start seeing that material through their peers' eyes. And we have a very good friend who's quite into 16th century art. And they could explain, like, here's why these things are posed in the picture this way, or this is what this is representing. And for my to hear that from another peer, it's a lot different than listening to mom talk about it or reading a book about it or hearing the curator at the museum speak about it. And those are all valid ways to learn as well. But when it comes from a peer, it's a lot different. So when we were in Florence, one of our friends was going to be there, and my daughter said, "Oh, I can't wait to go to the Uffizi with my friend," because she knew she was going to learn a lot more because the friend was bringing that to the table as well. And the last thing I want to say about the activities, my kids, they will go on walks and hikes, but they sometimes whine about it. So when there's other friends there, it's like this magical thing that we can just walk and it's not a problem. And nobody's saying, "Can we just turn around now?" Because they're
Right.
chit chatting with the friends, and it just makes the whole experience so much more fun.
I agree. A lot less whining when there are other kids present. And it's not the peer pressure, it's that they have somebody else there, somebody that they can relate to on their own level.
Exactly.
Mine, my little man, he doesn't normally love museums. Sometimes he'll go and he'll talk to us about certain ones. But I remember a time in Merida, and this is what one of the pop-up hubs that we went to with you guys. And he just made a brand new friend that day, and they were walking through the thing together and talking about the art. And no,
Yeah.
they weren't making like adult comments about the art, but they were relating it to their own things, their video games. They're like, and I have a video of them. That reminds me of the blood in whatever game. And I'm like, oh my gosh, but they're talking about the art.
Yes.
Uh,
Yeah. Isn't that hilarious?
it is
You would
hilarious.
never expect, yeah, like you would not expect them to be able to draw a conclusion from their video games to like some actual valid art and, and enjoy themselves in an art museum. Like it's surprising. And I love being surprised like that.
Those are pleasant surprises, especially as a parent. We love to see our kids growing and thinking for themselves. So that was awesome. And that's the type of thing that this can do for traveling families. And a lot of our listeners are, some of them are currently traveling, and some of them are thinking about traveling. And so I want to put out ideas out there, answer some of those questions that they're getting, some of the pushback that they're getting from friends and family, some of the questions that they're posing themselves and things like that. And this really leads to that socialization part. And those are really interested in unschooling and just world schooling in general. But I'm curious as to how you would define unschooling in your guys' lives.
So the way my kids learn is not in the school type manner. So it's not unlearning, like they are learning plenty. They are exposed to so much. And when they see something they want to know more about, we find ways to make that happen. And sometimes that's through an online class. Sometimes it is through visiting a place in person. Sometimes it's through purchasing workbooks off of Amazon and working through coursework. That's what my oldest child did so that he could graduate from high school. He needed to have those math credits. So I think we polished off 3 years of math in about 3.5 or 4 months. When you're motivated and you want to do it, it's really easy to learn it. I just make sure I'm checking in with my kids about what they want to learn. Some people are radical unschoolers, meaning they don't push their kids any direction at all. It's all about the kids. I'm not so radical. Like we're in Tokyo today. We're going to go see one of the folk museums, which has different architecture from over the centuries. Like this is what a village used to look like 200 years ago and on and on. So they don't like going to those places, but I do. So I'm going to take them there. We're here. We're going to learn a little bit about this. And so I do give them pushes now and then. When we go to a museum, I'll tell them, go read that sign so you learn something. But again, it's not like a big, I'm going to give you a test on this when you come out of here. I just want you to go and just know a little bit about it so you can appreciate it more than just looking at it. So that's sort of how we run our schooling. And again, we're all over the world. So we see what society feels like in different areas. We see old communist areas that are now rebuilding. It's just places that have been hit by earthquakes or have been through war, and you can see how that's affected that area and how business is coming up again or maybe not. And it's just those sorts of circumstances really put you into a different learning perspective. So you could read about it as much as you want, but when you're there seeing it in person, it's a lot different. We just spent some time in Normandy earlier this year, and I am not a war fan, a history buff, anything, but I like stories. And when we were there on the D-Day beaches and could see like how precarious that whole thing was, and here's the one bridge, if they had not captured this bridge, it could have just completely fallen apart. I mean, it was incredible. And I was so interested in learning myself just because we were there. So we do a lot of immersive learning just so that we know a bit more about the places we visit. And then the kids can take that experience and do whatever they want with it. You know, tuck it away for later if they want to, or really interact with it and learn more about it on the spot.
Well, it sounds like your travels have taken you all over the place. Is there a
Oh, yeah.
rhyme or a reason to where you go, why you go?
Usually budget is our top consideration. So yes, we're in Tokyo right now, but this was our cheapest flight from the continental US over to Asia. So we're moving now throughout Southeast Asia, and we know that for sure we will be spending less money in these countries than we would have staying in the US. So budget is a concern. Some of the other areas we've been, so if you've been in Europe, there's something called the Schengen zone, which allows you 90 days as a tourist out of 180. And I think it's at least 26 countries are in that pack. So you can spend 90 days within that group of countries, and then you need to get out and go somewhere else. We've gone out to Romania and Turkey and other places to play that little dance. Like now we're in, now we're out, now we're back in. And yeah, it's worked out really well. So budget is a concern, but then also like New Zealand is one of our favorite countries. So we ended up going there. This is very early in our travels, I think 2019. But we got there and then we spent a full 3 months. So we're able to spend the full visa. So by the time you look at what that flight cost, well, especially for a family of five, that was thousands. But we were able to, kind of spread that out over a full 3 months so that the transport to get there didn't really make a big hit in our pocketbook because we didn't have any other very large transport pricing, during that time. So we didn't have a big flight until 3 months after that. But yeah, so sometimes it's beauty, sometimes it's things we kids want to do. Like we learned how to scuba dive. And then we had the World School Prom in a castle this year. So again, another little splurge event, which worked out really nicely. And that was the place in Normandy that we were. So, I mean, we mix it up a bit. So I don't really have like one set way of how we choose where we're going. So sometimes it's the destination, sometimes it's the budget, sometimes it's what the kids want to see. And then sometimes it's if other people are running pop-ups and we have the opportunity to just dip down and catch that one before we go up, we'll do that as well.
That's awesome. So then I'm sure at this point now that we're just talking about jumping all over the world here and in and out of the Schengen zone, people are wondering how you finance this lifestyle. Is World School Pop-Up Hub the only way that you finance right now, or do you guys still work online jobs also?
Okay, well, I'll just back up a minute. We're not financing very much with the World School Pop-Up Hub. We are paying for our time and website, but I try to keep prices really reasonable because I think a lot of people are brand new to this and it's hard to jump into a longer or more time or price committed sort of hub. So we keep our prices low. I'm offering this as more of a service for people to come visit us or whatever host is out there. But yes, I am able to cover some of my accommodations, which is really nice. Other than that, we both work online, both my husband and I, and he works with stocks and investments. So he's a little bit tied to New York Stock Exchange hours, which makes our Asia time a little tricky for him because the stock exchange will open at 10:30 p.m. in the evening, but he'll figure it out. And then I'm also an author and a yoga instructor. But at this point, I'm doing more work with the pop-up hub than either of those skill sets.
Oh, okay. I'm like, there's always work for yoga instructors everywhere.
Yeah.
So, all right, all right. And really, what sets the World School Pop-Up Hub apart from other pop-ups or hubs that are out there? Like, what would you
So
say makes it a good fit for families that are looking for that travel experience or that authentic travel experience?
So I think the main thing is we're just offering week-long gatherings, which just allows people to dip their toes in and see like, oh, do I like hanging out with other world schoolers? And again, it's not a big price commitment. It's not a big time commitment. We're super flexible. Some of our families, even though we have 2 to 4 things planned each day, some families will come and we'll see them once or twice for the whole week. And they have a great time. Like they just wanted to do a few things and there's no judgment. It's just come as you are, do what you like to do. Other people will print out the schedule. They've got highlights and everything else going on. And that's how they want to do it. And that's perfect too. I mean, there's times where I'm like, all right, I'm heading out for the day. I'm going to go home and have a glass of wine and put my feet up. They're like, hey, we're going to the concert. And then the other thing that you have listed here. So I think the flexibility is really a key, like a signature piece of our pop-ups. And then also just budget wise that we try to keep things really economical. Families are in charge of their own lodging. So yeah, if you want to stay in the 5-star resort, go for it. Awesome. Or if you want to be out of town in the little cheaper spot and then take your 20-minute train ride into town so you can get to the center every day, that works too. And all the families do their own meals. Again, some might eat out every meal. My family, we tend to go to the grocery store and grab some cold cuts and cheese or whatever is available in the area we are. Right now we're getting sushi and taking a little picnic in a park. So I think that flexibility with budget also helps. And the other thing that sets us apart is we do not offer an education program. So many hubs, what you're buying into, you might buy into full service meals or all your accommodation in the community. But typically there is also an educational component and we don't offer that. So there's no drop offs. This is built for families to spend time together, explore together, but also spend time with other families. And it's just so neat to watch the kids connect. And then the parents start hanging out and they're chit-chatting like, oh, you're going to be heading there next. We might be able to do that too. And, I really just want it to be based in a social atmosphere, but then have that little bit of exploration on top of it. And again, not charging an arm and a leg so that it's open for everybody of all budgets. But yeah, I just want it to be super casual and fun and like not pretentious in any way, that people can just come as they are.
Yeah, and there is some stability, which I like. When I go to one of the hubs, I know that the host will always be at the events that are planned. That there's always going to be some stability to it. So that's what I've always enjoyed is, yes, it's planned out. I know what I can expect from a day to day, even if I don't go to every single thing that's out there. So that's really cool. Now, it sounds like you do a lot of work. And with your husband now, especially on the different time zone now, you're like 12 hours ahead.
Right.
13 hours ahead, 12 hours ahead, something like that right now. That's crazy. But juggling travel, work, family, it's obviously not that easy for everybody. How do you find that balance for you guys and still ensure that you're doing the best experiences possible for your family, for the hubs, for everything?
Well, I'll give you kind of a rundown of our day. So currently I'm traveling with 2 teenagers. I haven't said their ages. They are 14 and 16. And if you've had teenagers, you know that they like to stay up late at night and sleep in the morning. So usually starting in the morning, my husband and I are the first people up and we'll knock off a couple hours of work together. Well, not together. He and I will both be working separately, but at the same time. And the kids will sleep in. And after we get our work wrapped up, they're usually rolling out of bed sometime between 10 and noon. We can have a little meal at home and then we'll go out explore together in the afternoon and then come back and we typically cook dinner at home. And sometimes I'm also working again in the evening, same with my husband, and the kids will do their goofing off or whatever and play video games online. And I'll go to bed before they do. They'll put themselves to sleep, which is so different when they were little. Like, I couldn't imagine how much easier this is. Like, all right, guys, if you stay up too late, that's your own darn fault. And if you're grouchy tomorrow, I'm not helping. You took that on yourself. So typically that's what we do, that we have work time in the morning. My husband tends to work more hours than I do. So when we're in an area, we'll double check like what things are super important for him. And then we'll all plan that as a day. And then there's other days that I can go off with the kids and we can hang out at some of the, lesser known museums or places that didn't interest my husband as much. So we try to do a lot of things together. But then the nice thing also about having teenagers, especially more than one, is that we can send them I'm off in the evening. So now as I'm putting my feet up at night, the kids are out there walking around Tokyo, buying little musubi and sushi and mochi treats as they check out those city lights and listen to the sounds and smell all the smells. And yeah, so they can go off on their own. And they tend to like that too. And I think definitely as they've aged, we've built in more opportunities for them to be in safe areas where they can go off. And as long as they're in pairs, it's usually no trouble.
That was going to be my next question because I'm sure there are people out there wondering how do the kids go off and not get kidnapped? And at what age did you start really trusting them with that kind of responsibility? I'm sure it was in groups and stuff like that because you've got the older kids too. But
We rewind a little bit. When we moved to Kauai, my oldest was 10 at the time and is an avid fisherman. And we lived about a quarter mile from the ocean. So after school, he would take his fishing gear and his bike and he would go down and ocean fish on his own. And we're living on an island. Like, where are you going to go? There's always people willing to help. He was fishing right outside the library. So even though he didn't have a cell phone, we knew that there were people, if he needed assistance, who would absolutely help in a heartbeat. And we've really built in a lot of independence for them early on. When they were younger, if we went to, say, a shopping area that has a central location, if they wanted to go off on their own, like, hey, we want to go and buy a little ice cream or whatever, I'd say like, okay, I'll sit here. Here's the money. You can go do that. And then you come back here and we'll meet up with each other then. So kind of practicing a little bit of autonomy. And as they've aged, then we've been in other areas. So we spent quite a bit of time in Spain. This was in 2020. So part of that time we were locked down. But when we were not locked down, the culture there is so different. So my oldest, he was about 15. He was able to go out at night and come home at 2 or 3 in the morning because there was still like families were sitting down for dinner, like at midnight. I'm like, you know what? There's families out here. There's other people around. Again, I mean, it's a judgment call. And he just loved being able to have that sort of autonomy that he could make those choices on his own. And shortly after that, we went to Tampa and I was like, all right, guys, you got to be home by 8. They're like, what? It was just 2 a.m. curfew. I'm like, no, 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 no. We're somewhere else now. It is dark at 7. And so again, they've seen how we've looked at what is our situation here, what are the risks, what are the benefits of being in certain areas. And they've come to learn that different parts of the world have different safety issues. So yeah, when we're in an area that we feel safe, and honestly, when we were in Mexico City, my kids were out at night. They were riding the metro. Like I didn't feel like it was dangerous there at all. So you've got to make judgment calls and of course not be stupid. You got to be street smart, but there's definitely, you get good at it after a while, like trusting your gut instinct. Like this feels okay. This is all right. And letting the kids have a little more room when they need to. And especially when my oldest, I mean, both my boys now are over 6 feet tall. So that makes a difference too. And if we were talking about just my daughter going out on her own, I probably would have a little different sentiment depending where we are on the planet. So some places it would be totally fine. Others I would just say like, bring your brother with you, bring a friend with you. So that's life too. So you've got to be able to work that out and figure out those things as you go.
Okay. That's life. These are the decisions that parents have to make, whether we are traveling or not. So
That's true.
now, obviously, travel definitely presents us with opportunities to learn and grow. So, from your travels, what sort of experiences have changed or challenged your perspectives on different cultural traditions or societies?
Yeah, we've been exposed to a lot, and
Yeah.
certainly areas where people are divided by class and income. So like the haves and the have-nots. And we try to, some people as they travel, they may stay in a resort and never see anything outside of that resort. That's very different from the way my family travels. Of course, we stay in safe areas. We try to always make sure that we're making proper decisions like that. But also we're interacting with local people. So we see a lot of the differences between what families have accessible to them. And I think that's really good for our kids. And sometimes it's really hard. Sometimes there's extreme poverty and trash in the streets and kids without clothing. My kids have not been exposed to that much yet, but my husband and I, before we had children, we did a lot of those travels. And it brings you to a different perspective about what we have and what we have available to us. And as we travel through Southeast Asia, I expect that we'll have more of those experiences coming up for our children as well. And then we've traveled through different places that have different religious ideals. And we've been to places where women will cover their hair, especially when visiting mosques and other temples. And again, it shows us life can be different anywhere. And we've met lots of people who have traveled to different areas where women have different rights. And we can sit down and talk about those things. And we can say, is this a comfortable thing for the women? Do the women want more rights? And we can chat about that and see how that feels. And it's not something that we say this is bad or this is wrong, because I mean, some of the things that my family, like, oh my gosh, my shoulders are exposed right now. That might be, really, really uncomfortable for somebody else to see. But for me, it's within my comfort zone. So we're just like very open to saying other people have different experiences within their comfort zone. And we can compare and contrast, but it's not necessarily saying this is right or this is wrong. It's just accepting that this is how things are here. And we may or may not change that for ourselves. And we may or may not have an opportunity to make those changes depending on where we are located at the time either. So it's just an interesting experience to be able to dip into different cultures and societies like that. And I think it's really good for my kids to see it firsthand versus reading about it somewhere or watching a documentary. Again, both valid ways to learn about something, but I just feel like I take a lot more away from something when it's hands-on and when I'm experiencing it firsthand.
Okay. So do you have a cultural immersion story that's like dear to you that you like to talk about, or anything that comes to mind?
Yeah. Okay. So this is a pre-children story. We were in Vietnam and in a very small village. And the reason we were there is we had met a young Vietnamese man. He was probably in his early 20s. We were in our mid 20s. And he had told us he didn't have money to visit his family very often. And we said, well, if you can take a little bit of time off of work, if we pay your way, would you be able to show us your village and meet your family? And we could stay and meet everybody and get that kind of a local experience that wouldn't have happened otherwise. He said, oh my gosh, that sounds so much fun. Let's do it. So we did. We went to this teeny tiny town. It's called Viet Nam, and it's on the border of China. We actually saw the border there. We did not cross, but we stayed within Vietnam. And at one of the meals, well, first of all, people always asked us like, oh, are you married? And do you have children? And I would always respond like, no, not yet. Like, again, a cultural difference that certainly we were in our mid 20s. We should have had plenty of children by this point. And so they were maybe a little concerned that I wasn't fertile. And we had this beautiful meal with a family. They had 3 chickens, and in my first perspective was it was unfortunate, but they killed one of those chickens in order for our family to have a meal together as the honored guests. And they used everything. So they drained the blood and the blood got cooked. They used all the inner parts, pieces I had never seen, being from a westernized culture and not part of the farm culture. And so all these pieces are in different bowls across the table. And they would come around and serve us different items. And there was this cluster of globules, and it was like all these little yellow balls, like teeny tiny ones, and then they got bigger and bigger and bigger. And I figured out that was the chicken's ovaries as they were getting ready to produce eggs. And of course, they're putting things on our plates, so we can't really say no, thank you. And when it came to the chicken ovary part, the woman took her chopsticks and she put the whole thing on my plate, and I was like, oh, thank you. And I have never seen my husband look so relieved in in his entire life. He was just like, ah, thank God, I don't have to eat that. And I'm looking at this thinking, okay, I have to eat it because if I say no, thank you, that would be very rude. And they had explained to me, like, this is to help you have children. So very much, that was connected with the eggs and having children. And so I had to eat it. Luckily, it tasted like hard boiled egg yolk. I'm like, okay, I know that texture. I know that flavor. And I did fine. But I was telling myself, like, you cannot gag. You cannot throw up. And yeah. So anyway, it's good to be pushed out of your comfort zone. And that one had a happy ending. We've also eaten some very unusual internal organs in different areas. And again, you have to be gracious. And if someone gives you a gift, you say yes and thank you and please, and just have lots of gratitude that they shared with you and felt compelled to. So yeah, but that is one of my favorite stories, the weirdest thing they ever ate.
That's very interesting. Yes. Ooh, you're right though. We end up eating some different things, different places you go. Some of it's great, some of it's not so great, or it doesn't fit with our taste buds,
Exactly.
but it's always fascinating to hear about personal experiences, especially from people who've been living this lifestyle for a while now. Like you said, before you had kids, now that you've had
Yeah.
kids, and probably continuing after the kids are gone and all off to college. But now that your kids are teenagers, how has your approach to travel changed as they've gotten older and continue to get older?
Right. So we've touched on this a little bit. They've needed more autonomy and they needed that social circle. So definitely as they've aged, first of all, they're telling us more of what they want and need. Like when they were little, we could just be like, all right, guys, we're going to the beach. And everyone would go to the beach and have their buckets and swim and have a great time. But now they're to a point, especially when the oldest moved out. So he's the fisherman of the family. And we have spent a lot of beach time and jetty time, fishing pier time. And the younger kids are like, we have seen enough beaches. We don't want to do beaches anymore. We want big cities. And I was like, what? I am not a big city person. I don't want to be in big cities. I just, give me that beautiful blue water and a lounge chair and I'm happy, happier than happy. And so, no, we needed to do some big cities. And over the course of the last year and a half, we've been in, oh my gosh, so Mexico City, Denver, New York City, London, Istanbul. I mean, it just keeps going on, Tokyo, and we're having a great time. So we're learning from our kids. Like, yeah, the reason they like the big cities is usually we can just give them a transport card and off they go. And they can take buses and the trains and the metros and go explore what they want to do. And again, these are life skills that they've learned over time. So they're very good at navigating. They get their little map app out and follow the blue dot to get to where they want to go. And and the other thing with the big cities is there are lots of museums, there are lots of parks, there's so much to do that we don't get bored anymore. So when we were in more rural areas, yeah, there was days that we just went to the beach and then we came home and maybe watched a movie together. And it was fairly dull and relaxing, which I do miss a little bit. But now with the younger kids, they like the big cities. They like more things to do and more opportunities, lots of choices. So they help us with the planning now. They kind of direct us to what areas they'd like to go. And then also we try to build in places where there's going to be friends for them and that they can have that autonomy, that they're able to get out and do things the way they want to as well. Yeah, somewhere safe. I should mention that too.
Okay, okay. Do they tell you what they're doing, or is this a secret? Like whenever they go out and about in town.
I think it's both, but also there's an app called Be Real. So I don't know if you've seen this yet. And you just tell it what time zone you're in, and you just say who your friends are, and it's social media. And once a day, you'll get a little ping that says it's time to be real. And you have 2 minutes to take a picture of whatever's in front of you and then a selfie. So that it's basically, it was designed so that if you're like sitting in a meeting, like this is what I'm doing right now, or if you're in the metro, that's just what I'm doing. But my friends are all World School friends. So what we see is like, oh, they made it to the pyramids, or oh, this is great. They're rafting down the river, whatever it is. And so anyway, I can spy on my kids a little bit because they're also my friends on Be Real. So sometimes I'm like, oh, that's what you did last night. That looks pretty cool. Like, I don't know if I would have said yes, but good for you for going and checking that out. So yeah, they sometimes tell us what they're up to and sometimes they don't. But guess what? They're teenagers. It doesn't matter where you live. That's how it's going to be. They could tell you I'm going to so and so's house and they went completely the opposite direction. You don't know. So yeah, I think part of the thing with having teens too is realizing teenagers are going to need that freedom to do what they need to do. And they're going to push for it. And it doesn't matter what kind of lifestyle you're leading. If you're world schooling or traveling full time or in a community, like there's going to be pushback. And that's how it's supposed to happen. That's how they figure out who they are and start building their way into their adult behaviors. So that's going to happen. You can't stop it.
I'm glad I still have a few years to wait till that. Not that long, but a few years.
Oh man. But let me say too, like, it is so cool. Like, I really, really, I've loved my kids, of course, from the start, but this stage is so fun for me because we can have adult style conversation. I don't need to worry if I'm swearing. I don't need to worry if I say something nasty and that's really off color and they'll nudge me and come right back with another witty comment. And it's really cool seeing these kids step into adulthood and figure out who they are and decide what they like in their lives and how they're going to do it. So people are very concerned about having teenagers, but at the same time, I feel like this is a super cool part of their lives. And it's really neat for us that we get to spend every day with them. Whereas if they were going to school, I wouldn't know 80% of what they were doing, if not more. So now at least I know like 50%.
Yeah, that's my favorite part about being before this a stay-at-home dad and now traveling dad with the kid is yeah, you get to be part of their life, not missing 8 hours, 9 hours plus commute of their day like you
Yeah.
would in a traditional lifestyle. So
Yeah. It's one of the main benefits for sure.
so obviously travel is very complex. A lot of the families that we're talking to are that are looking to get into this, they might not know where to turn, what kind of resources to look up. Does World School Pop-Up Hub provide families with tools, resources to make the lifestyle real, sustainable?
So, I mean, there's not necessarily a tool, but when people attend our events, I've mentioned budget more than once. Um, we're not big spenders. We're not going to Disney. We're not going to resorts. We're just checking out each area the way a local would. So if there's a nature walk at the Arboretum or a program put on by the local university, or like in Merida, there were all those cultural programs where they had the Pock to Pock ball game experience in the evening and then the live music and the street markets. And so like that's how I like to travel. And I want people to know you don't need to spend a fortune to live this lifestyle. We are literally living on less money now than we would be had we stayed in the States. And we're having a much richer experience. So I think when people attend our events, they're like, oh, let's look at what's on the schedule. This is how Rachel decided. And sometimes there's a day pass for a park or an entrance to a museum, but at the same time, you're not going to skip all those things. So I try to have a good assortment of some paid items, but typically nothing super expensive. It's not going to be a $200 day for your family. It might be $5 to $10 entrance fee. And so what I want people to take away though, is that you can have a really full experience without a lot of financial commitment. So of course, if you're in Siem Reap, you want to spend the $37 to go see Angkor Wat. Okay, like that's going to be something you have to do when you're in Cambodia. But other than that, it's like the $2 tuk-tuk ride so that you can go down and have the experience of the night markets and walking through the streets to see what life is like in this area. So I want people to know that it doesn't have to be your days booked top to bottom with lots and lots of expensive options. There's many things that you can do right there, like walk through the park, go see the flamingos coming in to the nature preserve, go be part of the local culture and see what neat events are going on that really don't cost an arm and a leg. So I would say that's a resource in itself, but I don't actually like package that and sell you like, here's how to not spend money when you travel. Maybe I should do that. I don't know.
I hear a book coming on. All right. Lightning round.
Okay. I don't
Coffee
have any
or
coffee
tea?
though.
Oh, there you might have answered
Oh,
my question.
okay. That's a both.
That's a
Coffee.
both.
Yeah. If I
Coffee
had to
all
choose one.
day, or are you a coffee morning or coffee all day person?
Okay. So I only drink decaf coffee right now because my body's like, you can't handle caffeine and the amount of coffee you want to drink because I drink about 6 cups of coffee a day. So I will drink it all day long, but without the caffeine.
Cat or dog?
Catch.
Pool or beach?
Beach.
Would you rather be able to understand and speak every language in the world or be able to teleport anywhere at any time?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I might go with languages. And I'll tell you why, because I would love to be fluent in a language. And I've just come to learn about myself. I don't want to put in the time. Like I'll learn little bits and pieces, but I don't want to put in the time to be fluent. So if someone could just wave the magic wand, and dap me on the head, I'll take it. Yeah.
Bibbity bobbity boo. Yes. All right. Now imagine this. You get off the plane at your next destination and you arrive to the zombie apocalypse. Oh. You're able to get to your bags. What's the first thing you would grab and why?
Oh man. We have kitchen knives. I think I would arm myself some way. So
There
that
you
would be my
go.
best choice.
All right. Now travel trivia. What is the Japanese traditional art of paper folding called?
Ooh, origami.
Yes. What is one famous ancient civilization that existed in Mexico before the arrival of the Spanish conquistadors?
The Mayans.
Yes. All right. Which famous national park in the United States is home to the famous geyser called Old Faithful?
Yellowstone.
Yes. Which famous prehistoric monument located in England is known for its massive stone circle?
Stonehenge.
One more. Which iconic twin towers in Malaysia are a popular tourist attraction and one of the tallest twin towers in the world?
Is it the Petronas Towers
Petronas,
in Kuala
very
Lumpur?
good. Kuala Lumpur, 5 for 5. Very good.
Woo, I was actually really nervous.
Oh, you're great at Trivia Pursuit. There we go. All right, as we kind of wrap up, do you have any personal tips or advice for families considering embarking on their own long-term or lifelong travel adventure?
I would say for people who are interested in this lifestyle, there's not going to be a perfect time to start. You're never going to feel 100% ready. So just look for ready enough, maybe. And of course, you're going to need a little bit of savings to have a backup plan, an emergency fund. But if you wait for the perfect timing, it's never going to happen. So just don't wait. And I said before, we only have so many years with our kids. And if you can carve full-time travel into that plan for your kids, even if not traveling, just full-time with your kids, it's hours you're not going to get back again. Because when they're adults and they're going to go do their own thing. And it's really nice to build that bond while you still have them under the same roof. And then as far as starting on your travel, just go somewhere. Don't overthink it. There's so many resources online. You can just type in any search engine you like, traveling with kids in XYZ. And I promise you, there'll probably be an article, maybe from Offbeat Life. I don't know. But there's plenty of information out there. Like you don't have to reinvent the wheel every single time you go up that place. So just try it out, jump in. And no, also I talked about a honeymoon period. If you do jump into full-time travel, yeah, there's going to be a honeymoon period. There's also going to be an adjustment period, but that gives your family the opportunity to start communicating really well with each other because you can sit down and find out whose needs are not being met, what needs and wants do we need to make more of a priority for our family, and you can work together. And I think that brings our families so much closer together than we would had we just remained in a typical lifestyle. You go off to school, you go off to work, we come back and have a quick dinner, and then you're off at your practice, and this person's catching up on work and not having that chance to talk to each other. So I think it's really important to be communicating well when you're on the road and also to just jump in as soon as you're almost ready.
Great. Very cool. Well, finally, we love hearing about future plans. Can you give us a sneak peek as to what's next for the World School Pop-Up Hub?
Oh my. Okay. So I'm just going to pull up my list here. We have a dozen events going on right now. So right now, Cincinnati, Ohio. In September, we have Valencia, Spain, and Seoul, South Korea. In October, oh my gosh, Marathon, Texas, Malaga, Spain, Taipei, Taiwan, and Tokyo, Japan. And then in November, Kobe, Japan. So those are like back to back. You can attend both of them. There's a few days in between. Also, November is Budapest, Hungary. And then December is Buenos Aires and Lisbon. And the thing is, I'll be running in Seoul and Taipei. And then everything else is run by other hosts, which are world schooling families who have realized, like, hey, we need to be hanging out with other world schoolers. We want our kids to connect with other kids. And, we're getting lonely. We want friends along our way. And it makes the path so much more fun. So Buenos Aires, I happen to know some people who are going to be there. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. We're looking forward to the Buenos Aires one. We're working hard setting up a really good itinerary that we can put together that's going to be very kid friendly, get the parents some time to like hang out and, get to know each other a little bit better. It's our final leg really on our whole America's tour that we've been doing for 2 years now. So we really kind of want to put all stops out for it. And it's literally right before we go off to our Antarctic cruise to do, Christmas in Antarctica right afterwards, which people are welcome to try to get on that cruise if they can still. But we do have a Facebook group for it. So if people are curious, they can join the Facebook group. Just look for the Buenos Aires pop up on Facebook and you'll find it pretty easily. And we're going to be putting together a whole list of activities. And when people come down to the event, they get the full itinerary and they get to hang out with us. So that's
Awesome.
awesome.
Big bonus.
Yes. And I mean, if there's any full-time travelers that are going to be down there also, we might even do some really cool for the podcast. We might do some really cool live episodes as well. So instead of having to just meet Tokyo to Argentina like this, it might be a different experience as well. So if you're interested in anything like that, so those are the types of activities that we're looking at doing down there.
No, it'll be fantastic. There's so much in that city. And yeah, I mean, it would just be really hard to be bored.
Yes. And folks that are interested in working with Rachel, she's been amazing. This is our first time hosting one of the pop-ups. Long time attendees, first time host. But she's great at helping us, walking us through all the little pieces and processes, giving us advice on what we can do and how to plan things. So if you're looking at hosting one of these yourself, definitely reach out to her and I'm sure she can set you on the right path.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we're probably close to 20 different hosts now who've been working with us and getting events on the calendar. And it's really what I wanted for the pop-up hub was that there would be events running worldwide that I don't need to run myself, because if people are only going where I'm going, we would just have a really weird travel path. So I just want people to have the opportunity to tap into community wherever they're roaming. And I just think this is a great way to do it. And once you know the families, also, I should mention, so for you guys, you're already in Argentina. A lot of times, even though the event is 1 week long, the families stay longer than that. So they can meet up beforehand or hang out afterwards. You don't feel like you just have to show up for the week and then get the heck out of there. So
Yeah.
it's a lot of people stay for a full month, and it's really quite nice.
I think we're going to be in Buenos Aires for about 4 months and we're only holding the event for 1 week. So,
Yeah.
I mean, there's lots of opportunity for folks if they want to come down. And I know we already know a couple other families that are going to be there at the same time anyway, and they're going to be coming to the event. So, yeah,
Awesome.
if you're able to make it down to the event, it's just going to be the final week that we're there, but there's going to be a lot of things going on, lots of time to hang out. Like I said, we're there for 4 months. So.
Yeah. So I'll just say it's going to run December 10th to 16th. And we're in the year 2023 right now. So if people are listening to this in the future, they know they missed out, but they should look again, because you guys will probably have another one set up sometime soon. They're so fun.
They're very fun. And I hope to be able to talk to some others that are hosting some of the events as well. And we can let people know about their events as well. So that's going to be really cool to stay tuned for.
Excellent.
All right. Well, again, Rachel, thank you so much for your time today. Is there anything that you still want to get off your chest?
No, I want to get out to this Japanese folk village. My kids always tease me whenever we go past a historical village. I'm like, no, don't let mom see the sign. She'll drink us in there. Yeah. So that's our plan for today. So today's about me, not about the kids.
Awesome. Well, I know you're
And
just
that's
getting
okay too.
started with your day. It is. It
Yeah.
is okay. So I know you're just getting started with your day, so you have a wonderful day. And those of you listening, enjoy the rest of your day, whether you're beginning, middle, or end of your day. We will be seeing you around.
Thanks so much, David.
Thank you. Bye, Rachel.